Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining the SAP Cloud SDK community call, the fifth this year. Today we have with us, Marika, who is a developer for the SAP Cloud SDK. And before Marika will speak, I'll hand it over to Henning, who's a product owner for the SAP Cloud SDK. Henning, please take it away.
Thank you, Marshall, and welcome everyone also from my side. I want to briefly give an update on what's new in the SAP Cloud SDK since our last community call roughly a month ago. Before then, Marika will dive deeper into today's topic. So our agenda today looks as follows. We'll start with the view on what's new in general in the SAP Cloud SDK, but particularly our topic that Marika will later talk about is what's specifically new in the SAP Cloud SDK for JavaScript. So what happened in the last several months, which new features are exciting and worth to try out, and she'll also give a demo on that. And at the end, we'll also have time for your questions and answer those questions. But before we go deeper into today's topic, a brief look into what's new in the SAP Cloud SDK, specifically since our last community call in October. If you have missed that one, be sure to check out the recording, which is available from the community call website. So what happened in October within the SAP Cloud SDK? We released, again, a couple of new versions for each of our components, starting with on the first on October 10th and then on October 24th again. In Java, we released versions 3.5 and 3.6. So the latest one as of today is version 3.6. And one exciting new feature here is the ability to configure retries as part of your resilience configuration. So if you wrap your code to execute it in a resilient manner with circuit breakers, bulkhead configuration, etc., you can now additionally also configure retries to automatically retry this code if it fails a certain number of times, and thus improve the resilience of your application as a whole. And that, of course, all coupled with the other resilience configuration parts. The OData generator that is part of the SDK for Java now additionally also looks at the annotations that the OData specification defines for determining which CRUD operations are available. So whether to, for example, generate a create operation for a certain entity. This is an additional feature of the OData generator available with the latest version. In JavaScript, we had also two new versions. Specifically, a highlight here is definitely the support for OData batch requests, which we'll go into more detail in a moment. In addition, we also now, with the generator out of the box, generate so-called season files or core data services schema notation files, which can be used when building CDS models with the Cloud Application Programming Model to out of the box include entity types, etc., from the S/4HANA Cloud APIs in your CDS modules, and also for anything that you use the generator for. Another important topic is that the SDK for JavaScript with these new versions is now able to retrieve verification keys for JOT access token in an online manner by contacting the XSUAA service. It's important to update to these new versions to be prepared for an upcoming change in the XSUAA service, which mandates this online verification of JOT access tokens. And in the continuous delivery toolkit, one new feature here is that there is now a debug log, which makes it easier to identify issues and report incidents with the continuous delivery pipeline of the SAP Cloud SDK. So that's what's new in the SAP Cloud SDK since the last community call. As mentioned before, today we'll have a closer look into what's new for JavaScript in particular. And for that, I hand over to Marika, who works in the SDK for JavaScript team, and will give us a closer look into a few of the features that are new, not only in the last month, but in several of the last months.
Okay, thank you, Henning. So today, what I will show you, first of all, I will give you a short recap in case you haven't seen the SDK in action yet. So over the general features, but then I will dive a little bit deeper into three major features that were implemented during this year mostly, and that were implemented since the last call of this kind where we demoed something like this. Those three features are, first of all, the OData client generator that can be used to generate custom OData clients or OData clients for services that are not covered by the virtual data model that we deliver currently, which is only for SAP S/4HANA. Then I will show you the functionality of batch requests, which means that you can combine multiple requests into one, as is defined by the OData standard, and how you can use this with the SDK now, which is quite new. And I will also give you a short glimpse at the command line interface tool that we just released as an open source project, which allows you to quickly enhance your project with assets that the SDK provides. But what that means exactly, I will show you in a few minutes. Okay, so let's start with the demo. So first of all, what I will show you today is an application that we used for the TechEd of SAP in the last months, and also we'll use next week on TechEd Bangalore. This is a so-called timesheet application for a team, so a team calendar. You can see we have team colleagues here on the left side and their appointments on the right side. And you can see different kinds of appointments. First of all, you have these appointments with these dotted lines. Those appointments are appointments that come from a local database. In this case, this application currently is running on Cloud Foundry, so it's a local database on Cloud Foundry. Then we have appointments like this one, where it says retrieved from SAP S/4HANA, and also they have a non-dotted line, so a solid line. Those appointments are from SAP S/4HANA. And then if I go further a little bit, you can see that Peter Parker has a green appointment, and those green appointments are appointments that are retrieved from SAP SuccessFactors. In addition to that, you can convert appointments from local appointments to S4 appointments by approving them, which I will show a little bit later, so it fits to what we're actually working on. So this is basically the application that we have. And now I have a local version of this where we don't have any SuccessFactors data. So let's take a little bit or a closer look at the application, the code of the application, and what is missing. So in order to get data from SAP S/4HANA, what we have is a function that here combines the three data sources that I was talking about: the local appointments, so the data from the local database, the appointments from a remote database, which is or from a remote service, which is S4, and SuccessFactors, which you can see the name by the name of the functions. So let's go a little bit deeper into how the S4 appointments are read. So here is an example. You can see that the function is quite short. We use a person and a year, so we want to get the appointments for one person for 1 year. And what we expect is a timesheet entry, or a list of timesheet entries. So let's take a look at what this timesheet entry actually is. So if I go to the top of the file, you can see I'm importing this timesheet entry from a package, an NPM package that's called SAP Cloud SDK Workforce Timesheet Service. So this is a service from S/4HANA that we provide as a virtual data model to you. So you can use that to request data from SAP S/4HANA or make requests to SAP S/4HANA. And how do you do that? So in the first lines of this function, I'm just defining a few information. So first of all, I'm reading the person ID of the person that I want to read the data for, and I'm looking at this year. So I'm only interested in data from during this year, and then I'm good to go. So for this, I use the timesheet entry entity that I just showed you, that is imported from the VDM package for a workforce timesheet, from the workforce timesheet service. For this, I create a request builder. This is done by invoking this method here. After that, I say that I want to retrieve all data from this for this entity basically. So I could also say that I want to create data, or that I want to get data by key, so just one timesheet entry, but I want to get all timesheet entries that meet some specific criteria that I defined on the top here. So I do that, and then I define a filter, and in this filter I say that the this property of the timesheet entry, which is called person work agreement external ID, is supposed to be the person ID that that I have on my person. Then I have a timesheet date, and this should be within this year, so greater or equal the from date and less or equal the to date. In order to execute this request, so this part basically will define a request. In order to execute this request, I have to pass some data or some information about the destination that I want to send this request to. I do that by passing the destination here. And as you can see, I'm not passing any actual information. I'm just passing the name of a destination, which is called destination name here. This is due to the fact that we're reading the data from an environment variable in the local case. So if I develop this locally, this will be read from an environment variable. But if I define this on SAP Cloud Platform, then we will use the destination service for this. So if you have a destination named like this, or if you have a named destination, this destination will be retrieved from the destination service. So in our case, we have environment variables, as I said, a destinations environment variable that defines the name and also some information. So we're using a mock server here. You can see the URL here. And from that's where we will read the data from. So let me open a terminal and start this locally. Okay, and this is running on localhost 8080, so let's go there. And as we can see, we have data here, but we don't have any SuccessFactors data. So this is the same data that we saw on Cloud Foundry with the running application, but there is no vacation here. So in order to get this vacation, or the data for vacations, I will stop this and close this so we have a little bit more to see. So in order to do that, I want to use the SAP Cloud SDK generator for OData services, or for OData clients. I already have a dependency here in my package.json. Let me open that. So we have the SAP Cloud SDK generator, and this can be used to generate my VDM. For doing that, or for my OData client, for doing that, I will need two things basically, or one thing is important, let's say it like this. This is a specification of my service, and this specification should be in the EDMX format. We can see that in this case, I downloaded the EC time off service specification from the API Business Hub for SuccessFactors. And in this specification, I will also find something that is called, what was that? Employee time, which is the equivalent of the timesheet entry that we used only on SuccessFactors. So employee time will be the one that I need, and this is part of this service. In order to transform that, there's one additional file or configuration file that can be used. This does not have to be used, but it will be automatically generated if you don't do that. For this service, here I defined that the directory in which this time off service should be generated is supposed to be this directory. So within my output directory, this will be the directory where the data will be put to. There's supposed to be a service path. Normally, the service path will be read from your specification file, but in case this specification file specifies it a little bit differently, because sometimes OData is interpreted a little bit differently. So although it's a specification, sometimes it's not followed. You can change this path here to make it work with what you need. In addition, if you want to use your service that you created, your OData client, internally, maybe you want to add it to a an internal package registry, NPM registry or something like this, you can also generate NPM package or everything around the NPM package basically that you need, package JSON and so on, and then the NPM package name will be whatever is in here. Currently, this is the name that we are using, but we don't want to create any packages today, so this is not really relevant for us today. So this is basically what you need. You need the service definition in an EDMX file, a service mapping if you want to configure how data will be configured. So if you want to basically manually change the data. And in addition to that, you then run the generation and need to pass input and output. Of course, if you want to share your configuration, the arguments that you pass to the command, you can also put that in a configuration file. This is what I did here. So we have a configuration that specifies where the input directory and the output directory of our generation should be. So the generator input folder will be parsed for EDMX files, and then the output folders in the output directory, we will generate all the services or all the OData clients for all the services. In this case, I also want to clear the output directory in case there's something old in there that I don't need. So then I will run npx generate OData clients. And I will pass the configuration, which is the generator config here. And this is now parsing my arguments, which are those as mentioned. In SuccessFactors schemas usually, or in the SuccessFactors definitions, there are usually multiple schemas. They will be merged here in this case. And then the entities will be created. So let's take a look at our generated folder. You can see this is the EC time off service that we defined in the service mapping. So this is the directory that was created. We have an npm-rc that specifies where this all comes from, because the services are defined in a specific SAP registry. Then we have a lot of entities, as we can see here. TypeScript files, JS files, and type definition files, as well as mapping files for every entity and every entity request builder. So we have lots of request builders for lots of entities that we use. But in our case today, we are interested in the employee time, and this is what we're going to use to get data from SuccessFactors. So this is the whole service, and we will just use this part. In addition to that, like as Henning mentioned before, you can configure your generation as you wish. So there are much more arguments that you might want to use to tweak it a little bit. And in addition to that, you can also generate season files, which are delivered for the SAP S/4HANA services out of the box. So they're already part of the services that we deliver. Okay, let's go back to reading the appointments. So as we saw, we are reading appointments from S4 and SuccessFactors, but SuccessFactors currently just returns nothing. And that's not what we want. We want to return the same thing that we did for S4, only in SuccessFactors, basically, the equivalent, as I said. I already typed that out before. You can see here, we do the same thing as we've done before, right? We have a different entity now. This entity actually comes from our generated folder in our EC time off service. So we import this from here. So this is not a pre-packed package, but our own module. And then we use it in our read SuccessFactors appointment by person function. We again have an ID for SuccessFactors, a time area that we want to get this from. And also we are looking only for vacations. So what we do is we call the employee time request builder. Again, we want to get all the data or all the employee time entities. We select some data that we want to see or want to use in our code, and then we filter it by the time type, person, and then also it should be within this year. This time we execute it against a different destination, as you can see here. The name of the destination here is SuccessFactors, because of course the data comes from a different destination. Again, here the same rules apply. This destination is part of the, existing in the environment variables. Actually, you can see this here in the logs, and environment variable destinations is set. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. And on Cloud Foundry, or on Cloud Platform, this will be a part of the destination service. Okay, let me save that and run this again. And now that I've run this locally, you can see that now we also have a vacation here. Okay. Now we've seen that, but I told you before that one more thing that you can do in this application is you can change the local appointments to, or approve the local appointments, so upgrade them to S4 appointments basically. What we do for that is, due to technical reasons, basically we're splitting the appointment to multiple days. So let's say this appointment I want to put to S4 basically, then I will split it into days, and for every day I will write an appointment to SAP S/4HANA. So let's approve this. You can see this is now not dotted anymore, or now it's solid. If I reload this, you will see that there are 3 appointments now. And this is exactly what we're currently doing. So let's take a look at what is happening here. We have the, so on appointment update, so this is what we're doing. We want to update the appointment. We're getting information about the person, but basically what we're doing is we're splitting the appointment into days, as I said. This will result in dates. So you can see a list of dates. And for every date, we then build a timesheet entry. So an S4 entity of type timesheet entry, and this will be then written to SAP S/4HANA. So first we create all entities, then you write all entities. Let's take a look at the code for this. So building here works like this. We have an appointment. So this is the actual appointment that covered 3 days before. A person, and then also the day that we want to create the appointment for. And then we set the data here. So some data that we want to set, that's not so relevant, but let's take a look at this here. We have the timesheet entry entity, the one that we used to create the request before. And instead of the request builder here, we use the builder, and the builder is meant to create entities. And then you're able to set all the entities or all the properties of the entity that you want to see in your entity in the end. So we're going through all these, and in the end you build the entity. So this will return a timesheet entry in the end. Now you have the a list of entries, and for every entry then we write this entry to SAP S/4HANA. So we do the same thing as with reading, only with writing. The syntax is very, very similar. We pass the entry here. We call the timesheet entry request builder once more, but instead of getting all the data here, we create an entry. So we call the create request builder basically, and pass the entry, and again execute this against the destination S/4HANA. And this is how this is currently happening. But of course, you can imagine that for some cases it might be more appropriate to, instead of, now in this case we're sending 3 requests, but it might be more appropriate to just send 1 request, right? So put all requests together and combine them into 1 batch request that will be then executed once, but does the same thing. So let's take a look at how this could be achieved. So first of all, as I said, we're splitting the appointments here, but instead of that, I would imagine something like this. Let's change that. I want to have some function that is let's call this write appoint or write timesheet entries by person. And then what I would would give this function would be the appointment and a person, without splitting it into days, at least on top of on this level here. So let's try to implement this kind of function that will execute a batch request for all the appointments in here. So we go back to write appointments. I will create a new function, which is asynchronous, because we're requesting data from SAP S/4HANA, right? And this function will be called write timesheet entries by person, and we get an appointment, and we get a person that we want to send this for. And as a result, we will get a promise, because this is asynchronous, of batch responses, which we didn't have yet so far. Please. Yeah, a list of batch responses. So this is what we want to do. So first of all, let's, so what do we want to do? First of all, we still need to split the appointment into days. So let's split this into days. We call this variable days. I copied the function over from before. So need to import this here. So now we have a list of days that we want to represent in S/4HANA. Then we want to have some requests. So that's or some entities, timesheet entries that we want to create to later then be created as single instances of the timesheet entry. So let's map those days to timesheet entries. We call this entries, and then we map the days to timesheet entries. And for this, we can reuse the build timesheet entry function that we used before, right? Because this will create a timesheet entry based on an appointment, a person, and a day. So build timesheet entry for an appointment, a person, and the current day that we're looping over. And from this now we can create multiple requests. So let's call this requests. And for every entry, we want to map this to a request, which will be then done by timesheet entry request builder. And as we saw before, we want to create this for a entry. So now we have a list of requests, and we don't want to execute them one by one. We want to execute them all together. And for this, we now can use the new feature of batch requests, which is invoked by calling batch. And actually, batch allows you to do multiple things. So as of the specification of OData, you can send multiple requests or multiple GET requests, basically. So as you can see in this signature here, either you can use GET all requests or GET by key requests on the top level, or you can send OData batch change sets. And those change sets will then always be write requests. So you can order them in any way you want. Either have atomic atomic GET requests, GET all or GET by key, or change sets, and you can interchange them as you want. In this case, of course, you need to make sure that the response matches whatever you're requesting. So what we want to do is only send change sets. It's for now it's easier, but also for our case, what we want to do. So we pass the requests here. And the last thing that we want to do is, of course, execute those requests. Once more, we pass the destination as we've seen it before. As for HANA. Oops. And this will execute this, or will execute the same thing or do the same thing that we've seen before, only in one request. So this will execute a batch request and pass one change set with all the requests that before that would have been executed one by one. Now we still, of course, have to use this. Just make sure that I wrote it correctly, and then we import that. And I'll restart the server. Okay, I apparently made a mistake. And I don't see the mistake. Well, of course that had to, maybe, no, it's the correct one. Maybe I imported a wrong change set in here. Let me see. So I would have to, yes, I imported this from the generated service. This is wrong. This will not work. But if I import this from here, it should work. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, that looks better. The server is running again. And if I reload, I will see now I have, again, local appointments. So let's try to do that. Let's see if this works. I approved that. Okay, it's already marked correctly. So the call went through. And if I reload, it didn't work. That's, of course, not so great. I'll try that again, but I'm not sure what I did wrong. Well, interesting. When I tried this before, it worked. I don't see what I did wrong. Everything seems fine for now. Well, okay, we will have to live with that. And the request at least went through, but I don't see what I did. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, I will not find out what went wrong here. I think the syntax is correct. Maybe I'm just doing something wrong up here. I just don't see it now. Okay. Now we've seen a lot of features. So what we've done now is we went through how to read data from different sources. We saw how to create your own OData service. We created a batch request that probably in your case will work. In mine it didn't, but it doesn't matter. So all those things it's probably a lot to take in, or there's a lot of features that are around that. There's also, of course, there are more details to, for example, the destination service, XQA service, and so on, that will, of course, be different in production. But what does that all mean? So how can I start working with the SDK if I already have a project, or if I want to start working? So those are things that we provided from the beginning. We have a small scaffolding that you can download. You can find this in the tutorials. But we also thought that we want to make this more convenient, or as convenient as possible. So what we now did is we created a so-called CLI, a command line interface, for applications that are running with the SDK, or for applications that want to run with the SDK. So for this, I created a small demo here. So before we had an Express.js application, here I'm using a Nest application, which is meant to work very well with TypeScript. That's why I chose that. And I just wanted to try how it works with Nest, because this is kind of a fancy new thing in the area. As you know, with JavaScript and TypeScript, that's always something new. So I just tried that. And here I want to use the SAP Cloud SDK CLI to actually enhance this project that does nothing big yet with the SAP Cloud SDK. So maybe let's take a short look at the application first. It's just a small application that runs on port 3000 here. We have a controller that takes GET requests and for any route actually executes this function, and this function goes to the app service and calls the getHello function of the app service. So let's take a look at this. Okay, this app service just returns a hello world string. If I run this npm start actually here, I will find, I can see this here. I will find this. Okay, we can see that the hello world string was returned. So let's stop that. And now what I want to get data from S/4HANA somehow in this application. So just configure it so that I can use it with S4 with not only with S/4HANA but with the SAP Cloud SDK in general. So for this, there is the SAP Cloud SDK CLI, as I said. In order to install this, you can either do that globally or locally and add it to the project. There are benefits of both versions. I like to add this to the project because then you always have the same version. And in case, I mean, currently there the functionality is more for setting up, but in the future there might be functionality that you will also need for productive use of the applications, and then it might be nice to have the correct versions. So I will call npm install -d, which makes it a dev dependency. And I want to have the SAP Cloud SDK CLI. So as you can already see, this is not coming from the @SAP registry anymore, because this is an open source application or an open source product or project, both. You can find it on GitHub, and this is the, this doesn't need a specific proprietary registry because this is part of npm.js, the default registry of npm, basically. So I installed that. So you can see this is part of my package JSON now. Here I have it. And then what I want to do is I want to run, so I want to initialize the project to use the Cloud SDK. So what I do for this is SAP npx Cloud SDK, and then I just type init, and that's basically all. And I will get asked some questions. So I have to enter a project name for my manifest YAML, which I will need for running this on Cloud Foundry. And the default will be CLI demo, which is the name in my package JSON here. And here on the top. And of course, I want to use that in this case. The command to start your server. Yes, I also want to use npm start, the one that I'm using locally. And as today we're not working with front end, I don't want to install any scripts for anything front end related today. So now what is happening? This will add dependencies to my package JSON as well as CI/CD scripts, so scripts that we will need for the pipeline. Here we already can see some. So everything that is prefixed with CI- will be used for the pipeline. There are tests that will be needed or can be filled basically by you using whatever you want, and then you can add your scripts that will calculate the coverage of your code, and then you put this to some specific place, and this will, which is report or defined in here, and you can use that then in the pipeline. So out of the box now, by doing that, we will also add a Jenkins file for you to run on in the Jenkins pipeline. So those are the tests. Then we have build and package, which you might also need. Those are all scripts that will be automatically invoked by the pipeline. If you want, so you don't have to use them, but if you want to, those are hooks basically that will be used by the pipeline. You have the Jenkins file, so let's go through some of the files that are here. It's basically only downloading the pipeline, as it's usually the case with our pipeline. Then we have a pipeline config YAML, which defines the steps of the pipeline and the stages. So here you have some examples that are commented out so that you know where to start maybe. All this is already there. And what's still interesting is the npm-rc, because most of our packages come from the SAP registry, not the default registry, and this is also taken care of for you, so you don't need to add this manually. yeah, the manifest YAML file that was asked for, a systems JSON file to just give an example of how you could define systems that are then used in the tests. Basically, this goes together with something that is installed here in the dev dependencies. You'll see we have the test util that you can also use in the tests then. So there's a lot of small things here and there that are helpful to work with the SDK, and this is all taken care of for you. So now I said I want to get some data from S/4HANA, and what we like in our team is the business partner service. So let's try to use this one, npm install at SAP Cloud SDK VDM business partner service. And note that I did not have to specify any registry, as I usually would have to add this to an npm RC, but it's already there. So I don't need to take care of that. Okay, so this was installed, and then let's just get going. So in the controller, I have this this URL. Let's just, for simplicity, copy that. I want to say for business partner, I want to get business partners. And this is, of course, again, an asynchronous function because I'm getting these business partners from a remote source. So this is promise business partner. And this is a list of business partners. And I have to import that, of course. From the SAP Cloud SDK Business Partner Service. And here I then want to do something else, but let's implement this in the app service then. So here we also define get business partners. And again, this is asynchronous. And it's again a promise of business partners. And what I want to do is use the request builder again, get all of the request builders, and maybe just select the business partner first name for the sake of the example. So the first name and the business partner last name. And then again, of course, execute that. And this time I will execute it directly against the URL. As I said, we were using this mock service before. I will just use the same mock service here because it also has an endpoint for OData for business partners. So I pass that here. And then here I can just execute the same thing. Get business partners. And let's go. Still starting. Okay, let's go to this URL then. So here we are still alive. And this is now getting data from this mock service, from this S/4HANA service, and exposes the first and last names of the business partners that are defined in here. Yeah, so the CLI is very, very new, and we are still planning a lot of features on this. We still have to determine which ones are the best ones. But yeah, so there's more to come. And I think that's it from me for now. If you have any questions, now I have time to talk about this.
Thanks a lot, Marika. So everyone, if you want to ask a question, you can use the Q&A tab. Just click on it and ask the question, and Marika will be able to see it. If it's easier for you, you can raise your hand. There's like that feature, and then I'll open the mic for you. We'll give people another minute. Okay, so I guess we can close the call. Thanks a lot, Marika. Thank you, all attendees for joining this call. The recording will be posted in the SAP Community calls page in the SAP Community. So thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.
Awesome. Bye.